She's on the other side.
Lovely.
The workshop is creating African masks. If that's not the one you should be here, you want to leave. And our agenda for today is, we sort of got a little head start on the hands-on piece, but we're going to jump back to this piece, which is a brief introduction to African design. And then I'm going to do a quick demo. Then we're going to get back to the hands-on so that you'll have a chance to actually put some of these ideas into practice. And then I'm going to stop at the end there and give you some information about finishing techniques. Because part of what you need to think about in this kind of project is that once you get the clay piece done, fired, this, you're only halfway there. You know, there's a lot of finishing and adding to make this project more interesting and more exciting. So, I mean, you could stop with that and just do a plain black glaze if you wanted. Or you could go forward and do other things by adding pieces, jewelry, accessories, etc., and do something a little more exciting. Okay? So, half the job is after firing takes place. Okay. So why African masks? African art in particular is very exciting. It's based on modernism, or rather I should say African art inspired modernism. So there's a lot of traditional art expertise behind the idea of using African art themes in modern work. African masks are very sculpturally interesting. They have a lot of potential. You can do things that are very naturalistic, or you can do things that are very abstract, and still fall within that traditional idea of what an African mask would look like. African masks are ideally suited to clay, to ceramic techniques, because clay is so flexible and so it's like the wonder material. You can make anything out of it. You can make a piece of clay look like wood. You can make it look like leather. You can add texture to get all these different effects. It's very, very powerful, and it lends itself very well to genre, which is ceramic clay. Make sure I get all my points here. Okay, so they embody the basic, expressive, ritualistic emotions that come out of tribal cultures, and the ideas that you see in traditional African masks have been used as a starting off point for the modernist movements such as Cubism, which is Picasso, Fauvism, which is Matisse, and also Expressionism. So it's kind of a high-class area to explore in terms of the art world. Could be. Alright, elements of African design. What does that mean? The first element is shapes. So most African masks are geometric shapes. They're round, they're oblong, they're shield shaped, they're triangular. They have a lot of symmetry. So in composition, you've got bilateral symmetry, which is what is in nature. So one side looks like the other side. So if you have a circle over here, you have a circle over here. That kind of idea. If you have an ear here, you have an ear here. They have a lot of repetition in terms of pattern. So you'll see the use of things like X's and slashes in a row, diamond shapes, circular like pimples, but they're little balls of clay or balls of wood that have been designed to look like ritual scarification. The texture comes all the way from no texture at all, from being very, very shiny and glossy as skin would be, to being very textured as cornrows would be, or dreadlocks. They use a lot of fibers, like natural grasses, and woven materials. And when we are working with our clay, we need to keep that in mind because we want to incorporate that into what we're doing. So at different stages of your work with your piece, you're going to use all the range of sculptural techniques that you have. For example, right now, because the clay is really soft, we can do a lot of impressing of texture. Right? Later, when the clay gets harder, we can use tools to carve. And still later, when it's leather hard and a little later than that, we can use stones to burn it. So all along the way, you're going to do work on this piece. It's not just a one-shot deal. The first time you sit down with it, like today, you could spend an hour getting your basic shape together and smooth it out and make it nice. But then later, the next day and the day after that, and maybe a week later, you may be doing more work on it. So it's very deceptive in the sense that it goes together quickly, but it's not done. So, okay.
Chart of a low-fire factor. Okay, I'll pass this around.
The traditional use of masks has been for ritual purposes. So a tribe would put together a set of masks that they use to honor certain happenings in the tribal life, to reflect tribal pride and power, to act as defense against evil spirits. My masks, I call them African-themed masks, since I'm not African and I don't call from, I don't have that tribal background, but all of us in essence are African. We all came from that continent originally, so we have some basic consonances with that culture. Until recently, the design of masks has been a very spiritual and ritualistic thing. Tourism has changed that because tourism encourages an artist to think about what sells rather than the purpose of why they're making a mask. So your earlier masks that you might buy for hundreds of dollars, those are made with a very spiritual approach to it. The materials were chosen for a reason. The expression on the piece was chosen for a reason. Whereas tourist pieces tend not to be quite so thought out and not have such value. Wood is the most frequently used material because, mainly because of its availability, but also because there's a sense that wood has a spirit. So there's a spiritual dimension to the use of wood. Using certain kinds of wood has certain meaning. Wood is durable, so the masks that we make, if they fall, they're going to break. Whereas if a mask used in a ritual for its original purpose is dropped, it gains more, more interest because of the dent in the wood. The patina, right. Using wood chisels, I think I mentioned earlier that at a certain point, leather hard, you can actually use a set of wood chisels to get the effect of carving. So if you wanted to mimic the look of a very deep mahogany wood and you wanted to show carving marks, you could do that, and it would be a very effective technique to use. Tribes and individual artists have unique stylistic characteristics. So for example, if you've ever seen a mask from Benin, a lot of them are done in bronze, so they're very detailed. They have the long necks usually with the rings around the neck. They have very sharp features. Other masks, say from the Aduma tribe, look something like this. They're much more abstract. This one is actually a little more detailed. It has kind of the look of a southwestern look to it, kind of Indian. But their masks are actually a little more, not plain so much, but just not quite so detailed. But they still have this sort of grid color, and it's very small eyes. And this is something you might want to consider when you're choosing designs, is to look at a particular tribe's characteristic style and try to impart it in your own pieces. In your handouts, there's a list of online resources, and one is called Zayama.com. Excellent resource. You want to go there. You open it up, it's kind of funky looking. It's not really a fancy website. It's a page with all of these names that are underlined. They have links from A to Z. It's all the names of the tribes. So if you click on one of these, it shows you a page. It tells you geography, it tells you about the tribe, it tells you where they live, what they do, what their spiritual practice is like. It tells you what materials they use in their masks. It shows you examples. So you can go through and see how the different areas compare or contrast with each other. And you can find particular tribes where you have a real resonance. So I would recommend that you do that.
Is that on here? The email address? The website?
It is. It's on the page that's, keep going.
Forward or backwards?
Back this way. It's on the page that says online resources.
Oh.
You guys didn't get it? Did you get it?
Skipped. Maybe we just write it in.
We can write in the name if you want us to.
Yeah, very important. These two places. Oh my, I'm so sorry.
All right.
Where's the mask?
You misfire something.
Oh, you have it?
No,
No.
she just wrote it down when she said, I don't know. This is
Zayama.com is one. You can also go to, what's the name of it? Here we go.
This is the one under here? Yeah, we've got that one that says
Yeah,
Art
no,
Factory.
that's another one. That's a good place to go. That's where those outline drawings came from, and there are more. So there's another resource for you, especially if you're teaching classes and it's something you want to do. It's Zayama.com is one.
How do you spell it?
It's www.zyama.com/index.html. Excellent resource. If you forget that, just type in African art or tribal art or African masks in Google and it will get you there.
And it sucked up more glaze.
So we're talking about the characteristics of different tribes. What I had been doing for a long time was going to that website and just looking at the art, and comparing the masks and the design work. And out of that, I thought I had kind of a feeling for what I wanted to do, so I did this mask, right? But it wasn't intended to be in any particular tribe. Okay, I just wanted to do a human face that looked African, right? So I came up with this, and I had it hanging in my living room. And my mother came to live with us, and we had a caregiver who was from Eritrea. And she looked at the mask and she said, oh, that looks like the hairdo that women in the next village used to wear. And I thought, oh, I didn't even know it, but I was being accurate in my representation because I had done enough research to be exposed. So that's a consideration. Of course, I'm calling her Eritrea. So you want to immerse yourself so you get a lot of input and ideas about what common factors are used in the design. Okay. Alrighty. Other characteristics that you want to consider are the repeating patterns. A lot of tribes use this kind of diamond shape. Like that. And repeated X's and rows. Cross-hatching to, indicate a beard on a face. The cowrie shell is a very valuable shell. It's used in some places, or used to be used in some places as money. So the cowrie shell shape is used for eyes. So you'll see there'll be this raised form with a slit in it, and that's the cowrie shell eye that's used. And also ritual scarification. You can add rows of dots that are raised. Big areas like that, above the eyebrow maybe, would represent a design element that would add interest to the forehead of the piece that you're doing. So other design features.
On your fistware. It's a good thing to wipe down your fistware. Always wash your fist.
color. All right. So right now, the African cultures have access to Western pigments and Western color schemes and Western materials. So a lot of the new masks that you see coming out have really bright colors, and they're, you know, and that's fine. It's not what I would look to do for the masks that I'd be working on. I'd want to go kind of harken back to the older looking masks, the ones that had more subdued color schemes, more colors that were used, that were available pigments, say ochres, red, white, you know, chalk, black from charcoal, that kind of thing. So subdued colors that are more naturally found in nature. So you want to stick to subdued tones. You also want to use a clay or clay bodies that have color. You know, that when they're fired they have a rich round effect, or beige, or something other than a stark white. So the clay that we're using is Sculpture Burkhouse. It fires to a nice buff tone, and it takes color really well, and the after firing techniques that we're going to talk about capitalize on that. So another way you can sort of impart some interest and some age to your piece is to use a black wash. So at bisque stage, before you do any other treatment, before you do any other glazing, you might want to add an oxide or a black underglaze and then wipe it off with a sponge so it pops out all the detail. I have come to the point at several times when I've made masks where I thought to myself, I'm not going to do anything else. I love the way this looks. You know, how the black just settles into all the cracks and how old it looks. So you might make that decision that you just want to stop there. But almost all the time I go further. I just, you know how when you were a kid you kept overworking stuff? That's the way. Okay. You want to use natural textures, as we mentioned earlier. So if you have rough woven materials, basketry, braids, rope, raffia, grasses, anything that you can use as a texture, source of texture, you want to use. I have here a box. It's got all kinds of textures, including these, you know, for wood grain. It's got meat tenderizer. You can get that nice beveled look in it, and other things as well. So this will be available to you to use when we get to the end. Okay. You want to plan ahead as you're working. I mean, we weren't quite able to do that so much today, but when you think of working on a future mask, you want to sit down and really think through what it is you want to accomplish, because it's not like pottery. Pottery, you sit down, you throw something on the wheel, you know, and you get the form you like, you set it aside, you bisque it, and you dip it in glazes, and it's done. It's beautiful. It's finished. But with this piece, that's not the case. You've got different steps along the way, and you have to think about what it is you'll need later in the process. So, for example, if you need to add hair plugs. So this piece has a plume of horsehair, right? Well, I had to think ahead that that's what I wanted to do. So in here, there's a hole that accommodates this hair plug, right? And then this piece of leather just sort of covers where the glue oozed out in a way that I didn't like. So, but I've got holes here too. I could have put hair plugs out there. If I'm doing a mane, you know, I could put hair plugs all the way there on the perimeter and have that coming out. Okay. Horsehair is available anywhere. There's a website called www.kitchenpost.com. They sell it by the hank, so you get like a 2-inch thick wad of it, and it's not very expensive. I can't remember how much, but it's, you know, it wasn't enough to make me go. And you can dye it. So you could get black and white, and then dye the white to different shades. And we used you know, vegetable colors to do that. So think ahead. You want to think about where your holes are going to be. You want to think about if you want earrings coming from the ears, you have to have holes for the earrings to go in. You need reservoirs for glue and epoxy. You need it if you're going to add something later. One of the things I did here was these pieces are separate. That's made separately, all of that separate. So I knew that I was going to glue something here, so I have a hole that the wire goes in. And then I have holes for all this. This is wire. What else? I didn't do the hanger very good. We'll talk more about that later. Okay. What else? Other factors or features of design that you need to think about? Exaggerated features in a human face. Long noses, the big lips, teeth. They're all meant to express something. Because a ritual, remember the ritual source of all of this was to do something spiritual. So when they created a human being who was supposed to scare off the spirits, that human being looked horrible, looked ugly, looked unnatural. So they had, big exaggerated features. When they did animal masks, they were doing them to attract the animal spirits or to use the animal spirit as a protector. So the animal would have big teeth, would have a very strong demeanor. The other thing that they would do is they would use animal features on human faces and animal features on human faces on animal features to sort of mix the two. So those are other design considerations that you need to use in your art to make it look authentic. Okay? So let's do a little demonstration. Now I had you go ahead and do these first few steps. So basically you make a form. If you make it well enough and add enough tape, you can reuse this over and over and over again, and that's what I do. So I have a whole box of these in various shapes. I have long, ovals for the shield shapes. I have a particular shape that I use for giraffes. I have a bigger round shape that I use for elephants. So I have a collection, and I don't have to go through this process every single time. When they wear out, though, I do make new ones. So. You want to use this as the base, but of course you're going to have things added to it. You want to drape it with clay. Again, we're using sculpture raccoon clay, and we're rolling it out to about ½ inch. You can do thicker or thinner, but if you stick with about ½ inch, maybe a little thicker, then you'll be able to carve and use that without, getting too thin. Okay, so I've got that. And I'm going to come over here, I'll switch sides too. I'll share. So what I've got is a couple of slabs rolled out. And this one is the one I'm going to use for my mask, just like you did. I'm going to just kind of squeeze it down there. I'm compressing the clay, so I want a nice tight fit around that form. I am going to remove the form. I'm going to get rid of it later. But right now, I'm going to use it so that it gives me a nice support for the clay over. Alright, so I get something like that. Very basic. You might also want to use you use a rib, flexible rib. I usually like to use metal. First I'm going to cut off the excess that's just around the outside edge. Again, I want to keep in mind that I want it to go all the way back down to my base. I don't want to take too much off. Although I think I did take too much off. Let's see. And then you use a rib to compress the clay, pull it up from the edge, and I just turn it around as I'm going. So the idea is you want to get rid of some of the lumps. You don't want it perfect. Some people want it perfect. And if you want to, you could throw a shape on the wheel and use that, and then put paper in it and start from there, which would give you a nice, smooth, even surface. But I kind of like and treasure the imperfections that I get. Okay. So my drawing looks like this. If you think about bilateral symmetry, we're going to divide it in half and divide it in half. So I'm just going to use a little pen I'm going to find where the top is. Oh, this looks like the top to me, and that's the bottom. Okay. So then I'll just draw very lightly a little line across the top and one across the middle. Okay. So that sort of gives me the parameters around which I want to work. And then I want my piece to have a nose. So you can see it here, and I don't have a piece that's, well actually I do. See the profile on that? So that's kind of what I want. I want the nose to come down, and I come in, and then I want this little lip thing to come out, and then I want a mouth and a chin. So I'm going to do an uneven profile using a thick piece that I've kind of rolled out. Just about maybe an inch thick. So we're going to come down, we're going to slope the nose down, and I'm trying to keep my piece, you know, from angling one way or the other, although I'm not going to be very successful in that. Usually I'm not. And then I'm going to leave a little tip for the nose and swing around for the mouth. Take that out. And then I'm going to have the real mouth go back out to the chin. So what I'm ending up with is a very lopsided piece, which I'll fix. So it looks sort of like that.
400 colors on it.
So that's my nose and my mouth. And this is going to be teeth. I'm going to put teeth here. Okay. So now I just want to carve this a little bit just to get a flat edge on one side. So it lays nice and flat on my clay. Oh, you're just using your usual techniques. We're going to do some scoring. We score it, and we're going to score a line right down the middle where I've drawn my initial scores, just so that I know where it's going to go. Alright, and then I'm going to use slip to attach it. I'm not going to really do it, but you will. Won't you? Okay. And then you want to, yes, teacher. And then you want to get it nice and firmly attached. So go ahead and bring the edges down. Get that nice and attached. But make sure your mouth is, you know, make sure it's, you don't want it lopsided. You want everything to be sort of level, you know. And you want to do it from the beginning, because if you leave something, you know, if it's not quite centered, if you leave it there, it's going to be there forever, you know, all through the whole process. You're going to be fighting against it the whole way. So you might as well start from the beginning, trying to get it, you know, as close to the way you want it as possible. All right. So then I decide where I want my eyes. Excuse me. Let's step right in front of the camera. On each table I have a box full of these little cutting things, and I'm a scavenger, most of us are. I collected a bunch of little shapes, plastic shapes, cookie cutters. I have a compass, all kinds of stuff in here, which you'll all be able to use. I'm going to use this little one for the eyes, because I want them to be kind of small little piggy eyes. I don't want them to be quite that big. Just changing the design a little. So I'm just going to find a place that I think makes sense, sort of in the middle of that quadrant, and I'm just going to punch it through. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And if you want, you can measure it. You know, you can do it accurately or not. Okay, like that. All right. So then, what else do I need? Oh, big important thing. This is an animal with horns, so I want to make horns. So I just take a piece of clay, a kind of a triangular shape, like that. Okay, and I'm just going to fold it and just pinch it together. Okay. And I'm going to have time to refine this, but for now I just want it to look like that. Okay, so still hollow inside. It's fairly thick, so you'll be able to carve it down if you want. Okay, but that's my first horn, and then I'm going to have that over here. But it's a little big, so I'm going to cut it short. See, you don't have to stick with it anything. You can fix it right up to the end. So that's maybe a more reasonable horn. Okay? and then I'm going to put it here. But for some reason I'm really messy in the kiln, so I don't want to have this horn sticking out that might fall off. So I think, planning ahead, I'm going to cut this so that I can insert the horn later. Right? But anyway, so I'll do another horn as well. But we're going to switch examples. Alright. So this is what I've come up with. Alright, so I've got my side profile. I added teeth, kind of arched around the jaw like teeth would be, and they look like herbivores' teeth, they're straight. So I'm drawing from nature. I added a beveled pattern, what might be called scarification on the side here. I put the horn in. And I added a tongue. I thought it looked kind of, like the spirit of the antelope was saying, bah, come and try to get me. And made a hole for the mouth, which wasn't there before. And just generally cleaned it up. So I made it nice and sharp. And on the horns, I've been using some stone and some wood to just sort of make it smoother, smoother, smoother. Eventually I'll burnish the horn so that it will look like bone. It will look real. So that's the process. Use a form, use a nice thick sculpture clay, use some of the aspects of African design, including repetition of pattern, ritual scarification, all of that, and combine it to make something that feels right to you, okay? So you've already started, so let's go ahead and continue that work, and I'll walk around with you guys and help you out. A very large nose, you might want to make it hollow, so that air will escape. If you fasten it, be sure you punch a hole so that air can escape during firing and drying. Leather. But this is a wild boar's ear, and this is a giraffe's ear, but you could use it for almost anything. So these are available if you want to use them.
I would like to.
Yeah, you have to adjust the pattern. So this flange in leather would be what would fit in a smooth texture that looks like bone. You can get the skin to look really soft. How many of you do burnishing? Have used burnishing as a technique? Good. Oh, you have horn weaves. Good. I use those round black river rocks. Yeah. And I made it using a plastic piece from the wrapping from that product. So I used this to make a mold that gave me little circles, half circles that are exactly the same size. So what I would encourage you to do is you can use this mold to create circles that are all the same size and multiple ones, so that then you can pop them out of the mold scarring. So you see how that looks very clean and very uniform. When you're refining your surface, you can use water to spray it. You can use brushes to get a nice smooth surface. If you're going to insert ears later, remember you need holes for those ears. Or you could do this whole piece as one horn piece. And then you could keep going, try that. Work on it from now until it's too dry. You know what I'm saying? Each stage along the way, you're going to use different techniques, right? But if you want more workability, we've got a spray bottle there, so you can spray it.
Thanks. And I need to slip and score. These I didn't, but the clay was so smooth, I just stopped.
Yeah, it really is up to your judgment on whether or not the clay is too dry.
Okay. I can. Thanks.
It's always better to do it